See in the documentary series The Turkic World continuation about the most significant, in our opinion, states, the Golden Horde's successors, which played an important role in the geopolitics of Eurasia in 15th to 18th centuries. We move towards ourselves, recognizing ourselves in others. Oljas Süleymanov. The Noguy Horde, located on the left bank of the lower Volga, the southern Urals, western and central Kazakhstan, in the late 15th-16th centuries, was one of the leading political forces in Eurasia. The founder of the ruling dynasty in the Noguy Horde was considered a prominent figure of the Golden Horde, Yedygey, who was the de facto ruler of Juche Ulus in the late 14th and early 15th century. After death of Yedygey in 1420, his son Gazi, who was declared a Beg, became his successor for the reign of the Mangurt youth under his will. Gazi Beg was a cruel man. Unable to withstand his despotism, in 1428 emirs killed him, and then, with their people, began to leave the horde. When most of the emirs and tribal leaders left for Siberia, the Mangurt youth fell to decay for a time. One of his sons, Mansur, went to Haji Muhammad Khan. Another son, Navruz, was at Uluk Muhammad. Yedygey's grandson, Vokas, served Abu Khair Khan. The population previously subjected to Yedygey and his successor Gazi migrated to the Uzbeks, then left for Central Asia. Only a small part of nomads remained in the Mangurt youth, along with Yedygey's youngest son Nuruddin, who, according to the Turkic custom, inherited the youth of his father, who was in Yaik River. Nuruddin's claims to hegemony over the Mangurt youth caused a sudden discontent on the part of other eminent clan's members. They remembered humble origins of Yedygey and his descendants, who didn't belong to Genghis Khan's branch. In this regard, Nuruddin's supporters had to substantiate his right to rule, hastily compiling Yedygey's genealogy. By order of Nuruddin, at that time there was also compiled the genealogy of Yedygey's successors, who allegedly were descendants of either Sufi Hoja Ahmed Yasawi or Muhammad himself. The final formation of the Noguy Horde took place under the rule of Nuruddin's son Vokas. Vokas was one of the main figures under Abu Khair and even became his eldest emir. However, foreseeing weakening of the Uzbeks in 1447, he separated from Abu Khair and returned to the Mangurt youth, where he was declared Noguy Beg. In the genealogy of Noguy Begs and Mirzas, Vokas was named Noguy Beg, but he was also killed by Abu Khair's agents. After murder of Vokas, his brother Abbas was proclaimed Noguy Beg. The Noguy Horde is a designation of the late stage of Juche Ulus. There is a big polemic regarding the concept Noguy. Many people associate it with the personality of the Golden Horde emir of Genghisids, Noguy, who ruled in the Black Sea region in the late 13th century. But there is another version, in my opinion, more believable. The fact is that Kers Gandzaketsi, an Armenian historiographer, cites several Mongolian words that have come down to us. That is, the slogan of Kurultai, which raised Genghis Khan on a white felt, was that those who live inside felt walls should rule the world. According to Chinese historiography, Secret History, Yuan Chao Bishi, this leading idea was the main, uniting for those who were nomads in the Great Steppe, in the Eurasian steppes. But there was another political and legal tradition, which goes back to the Turkic Muslim identity. and those nomads who preferred the Turkic Muslim identity were named Noguy by bearers of the Turkic Mongol identity. Bearers of the Turkic Muslim identity could even be proud with this name, and in the end they took it as their name. I don't exclude the fact that Noguy is a nickname under which some other Cingizid's name is hidden. Therefore, when we speak about Noguy, we understand that this term, in ethnopolitical and historical senses, is not present in the present-day Adigs, but it appeared much earlier, since the beginning of the 13th century, if not earlier. Noguys, in the folklore of many Turkic peoples of Kipchak origin, appeared as a kind of epic tribe, like Nats of Assyrians and Abkhaz Adig people. Eleazar Meletinsky. After death of Vakas in 1447, his successors began to pursue a policy of separating the Manggut Yurt from the Uzbek Khanate. The reason for these actions was that Edugay's descendants dissatisfied only the position of Bekler Beg in the existing Khanates. Vakas's successor, Musa B, began to fight against Kazakh and Uzbek Khans for independence and achieved quite a lot of success. The capital of the Manggut Yurt became Saraychik city. Uzbek Khan Abulkair didn't put much hopes on the Manggut Yurt and didn't pursue a policy of violence against the Manguts. At the same time, the Manguts were strongly influenced by Siberian Shaibanid Iba Khan and then by Mamuk Khan. After dissolution of Abulkair's court, Abbas, along with Haji Muhammad's son, played an active role in seizure of Abulkair's eastern possessions at the mouth of the Sir Darya, the Amu Darya, and the Upper Irtish. In the 16th century, Manggut Beg's possessions on the northwest bordered on the Kazan Khanate along the rivers Samara, Kinel, and Kinelchek. Their summer pastures were there. In the northeast, the Noguy horde bordered on the Siberian Khanate. In the south, the Altai Mountains were a boundary line separating the Kazakh Khanate from the Noguy horde. In the first half of the 16th century, Noguy people roamed in the lower reaches of the Sur Darya, near the Aral seashore, near the Karakorum, Barsun-Kum, and the northeastern coasts of the Caspian Sea. On its actual strength, the Noguy horde became one of the most powerful state formations that arose after the collapse of the Golden Horde. However, the fact that the dynasty ruling it did not belong to Genghis Khan descendants made its position not very legitimate and placed its rulers in a lower position compared to other sovereigns of remnants of Juchi's Ulus. In such conditions, the actual Noguy rulers, Beks, had to formally recognize the power of some neighboring sovereign. So, in the early 80s of the 15th century, Siberian Khan Ibak was the formal suzerain of the Noguys. Just under his leadership in January 1481, the Noguy army crushed the headquarters of Ahmad, Khan of the Great Horde. Noguy King Ibak came to him and took the horde, and the godless King Ahmad was killed by his brother-in-law, Noguy Mirza Yamgurche. After the death of Ibak, his brother Mamuk became a Khan. At the very end of the 15th century, his troops could, for a short time, seize Kazan, allied to Russia, and dethrone Ivan III's protege Muhammad Amin. However, Mamuk couldn't take hold in Kazan for a long time. The Noguys besieged the city also under Abdul Latif, but then they managed to turn to bay. In 1505, when Muhammad Amin refused to obey Moscow and killed Russians in Kazan, the Noguys sent him a 20,000-strong troop with whom the Khan besieged Nizhny Novgorod, When representatives of Giray dynasty seized the Kazan throne, the Noguys' influence in the Khanate increased. To help Kazan inhabitants came 30,000 Noguys. Who wanted to fight against Rus, to enrich themselves with Russian captivity and Tsar's name.
Мы видим, кого убрали в плен русские казаки при захвате сибирского.
We see who the Russian Cossacks took captive during occupation of the Siberian kingdom. They were our sultans. It's quite strange to go and capture those who didn't live there. The Siberian kingdom emerged around a certain center of attraction, an economic center. This was on the border of the forest steppe, where fur trade appeared, where also economic city centers began to be formed. Accordingly, their power structures, their power traditions were formed there. But within the framework of ethnic interaction, we see how easily the same historical personalities moved between these states, without feeling that they went to a foreign land. That is, they were inside their space. There is a fine concept, being a Cossack. When you are for whatever reason deprived of the opportunity to exercise your authority, from your environment you move to the next one, where you fulfill certain roles. This can be called mercenary activities or allied relations. However, it was widespread. Even the Kazakh Khanate itself arose when noble sultans from their environment moved into the neighboring one. They gathered strength there, then again returned the part that they considered their ancestral land. That is, it was completely normal. If you're a good man's friend, you'll achieve your goal. If you're a bad man's friend, you'll be a laughingstock. Noguy proverb. By the beginning of the 16th century, the Noguy rulers no longer needed puppet khans, Jengizids, and the Noguy horde became a completely independent state formation. Direct diplomatic relations of the Noguy horde with Russia were established in the early 15th century. Since that time, a constant exchange of embassies between the states began, despite certain contradictions in the matter of Kazan, in which the Noguy rulers sought to strengthen their influence. For example, information about the Noguy embassy in Moscow was recorded in the official chronicle in 1502. It is interesting that the Noguy Beks at first did not insist on an equal status with the great princes. Only in the 30s of the 16th century they began to demand recognition of equality or even their superiority over the Russian rulers. It came to a point that they demanded from Moscow to pay tribute, which was due from the Russian lands during power of the Golden Horde. The first quarter of the 16th century turned out to be very difficult for the new Turkic Mongol state. A fierce struggle for power began between pretenders to Bekism. Simultaneously, the Kazakhs attacked from the east. In such conditions, many of the Noguys crossed the Volga to the right bank and became dependent on the Crimean Khan. Having subordinated to him, they participated in the devastating campaign of Muhammad Giray to Russia in 1521. By the way, the Russian chronicle points to hardly voluntary participation of the Noguy in the campaign. Crimean Khan downed them at that time, that is, they were subordinated to power. However, already in 1523, the Noguys killed Muhammad Giray and inflicted a heavy blow on the Crimean Khanate. Since the mid-20s, the power of Noguy horde was growing. Internal conflicts were settled for a while, the Crimean Khanate ceased to be dangerous. Close proximity allowed the Noguys to influence the internal situation of the Kazakh, Astrakhan and Siberian Khanates to enthrone their own proteges. According to some sources, these states were obliged to make certain payments to the Noguy hordes rulers. Bashkir tribes, subjects of Mangit Beks, were affected by even more direct and intensive influence of the southern nomads. The eastern neighbors of the Noguy horde were the Kazakh Khanate and Central Asian Khanates. Relations between the Noguys and Kazakh dynasties were also strained. There were cruel wars between them. In the first quarter of the 16th century, Khan Qasim conquered all the steppes beyond the Volga. But in the second quarter, Noguy Reconquista took place, and the Kazakh Khanate became a vassal of the Noguys. The Uzbek states mostly served as a shelter for refugees from the Noguy state, Beks and Mirzas, who had been defeated in the internal strife. Within the framework of the historical view, we see that these nations, these clans, these unities were not in fact opposed to each other. They easily moved from camp to camp. After all, we understand that after Qasim Khan, the western part of his state was again separated from what we now call the Kazakh Khanate, and this western part was part of the Noguy horde. Then it again returned to the united Kazakh people after the Noguy horde was destroyed by the Kalmyks. Thus we see that one tribal group came in, went out and came back. It was a normal process of ethnic history of that time. It doesn't matter that you lost your way. After all, you found your home. Noguy proverb. Political influence of Noguys on Russia was limited due to religious, Islam, and economic, nomadic cattle breeding barriers, and due to remoteness. Only since the second half of the 16th century, Mirzas began to move to the Moscow kingdom. Some of them marked the beginning of princely family names: Kutumovs, Urusovs, Yusupovs, etc. Noguy troops often acted as part of the Russian armies in the Livonian War and later in campaigns against the Poles, Germans and Swedes.
Нужно отметить, что среди правителей Ногаев, среди ногайских правителей беков, не было единства по отношению.
It should be noted that among the Noguy rulers there was no unity in relation to the Kazakh Khanate, and consequently to Russia. In the Noguy leadership, a split-up began in regard to Russia, and it took place on a geographical basis. Mirzas, roaming near the Volga, inclined to friendly relations with the Moscow authorities and agreed to recognize Russian interests in Kazan. This was explained by their economic ties with Moscow. They sold huge herds of horses in Russia and received significant gifts from the Grand Ducal government. In addition, from the Russians, they bought goods necessary for nomads. Therefore, there was good reason that numerous Noguy embassies often dealt with trade issues. Mirzas who roamed to the east of the Noguy horde often held an anti-Russian position, since they were not economically interested in expanding mutually beneficial trade with Russia. In the late 40s of the 16th century, Yusuf became a Noguy Bek. His attitude towards Russia was complicated. He demanded from Russia to recognize him a ruler equal in rank to the Golden Horde or Crimean Khans. Russia could not accept such demands. Several times Yusuf intended to arrange a campaign to the Russian lands, but each time these plans were frustrated. Yusuf's brother Ismail, the second person among the Noguy nobles, held a friendly position in relation to Russia. This had an explanation. He had control over the western part of the Noguy horde and was vitally interested in stable, friendly relations with Moscow for trade. When relations between Yusuf and Moscow actually ceased, relations with Ismail continued. Russian authorities placed their stake on him, trying to provoke a conflict between the brothers and weaken the horde as a whole. In the early 50s of the 16th century, Ismail frustrated several campaigns against Russia, particularly in 1552, when the siege of Kazan was going on. In the late 1554, Yusuf was killed, and Ismail, who was oriented toward Russia, became a Bek. Now Russia could never fear raids of numerous Noguy cavalry on the border and could strengthen its position in the newly subjected Astrakhan.
Для единства необходима торгово-логистическая инфраструктура, во-вторых, необходимо, скажем,
For unity, a trade and logistic infrastructure is needed. Secondly, a cultural and political concept is needed, which is the basis of historiography. There is a historiography, there is a trade and logistic infrastructure, there is a prospect of the state with political institutions. If they are not there, there will be confusion and vacillation. When we talk about Yedege and his descendants, we understand that Yedege's descendants were divided among themselves. On the one hand, those who adhere to the Orthodox Sunni orientation. On the other hand, those who adhere to the syncretic Muslim belief that came from the line supported by Tamerlane. Therefore, this contradiction ran through the Noguy horde history. This was not only a struggle of Yedege's times. It was most clearly manifested in the confrontation between Yusuf and Ismail. They were blood brothers, but the fact is that Mirza Yusuf from the Alti-Ul horde adhered to the Orthodox Sunni version of the world view, while Ismail supported the cause of Qasim's Jengizids, Muhammad Amin, etc. They sided with Moscow prince, who positioned himself as a Beklerbek under Qasim's Jengizids. But not just as a Beklerbek, but already as a doer of kings, speaking in the tied way of British traditions. But in fact, this was a tradition of Tamerlane, Yedege, that is, doers of kings, for whom Jengizids were needed as a flag. And basically, there was a doctrine that determined their claims of black bone and the syncretic interpretation of Muslim belief. Take advice from the one who loves, but not from the one who cries. Noguy proverb. When Ismail died, his son Din Ahmed, 1563-1578, became a Bek. The new ruler confirmed continuity of the policy for union and cooperation with Russia. Din Ahmed's successor became Urus, 1578-1590, who, in the end, gradually inclined to the anti-Russian position. The Noguy horde and the Crimean Khanate held negotiations, and their troops began to raid on Russia's border territories.
One
of the reasons for the deterioration of relations between the Noguy horde and Russia was also foundation of Russian cities in the Volga region. In 1586, Samara was founded. In 1589, Tsaritsyn, in 1590, Saratov. In 1586, Ufa city was built in Bashkiria on the land that the Noguys considered their own. Beks were explained that the new cities were intended to protect the Noguys from attacks of the Volga Cossacks, who at that time began to greatly annoy the horde. In fact, the cities were formed in the most convenient crossing points across the Volga in order to stop nomads' raids. All demands of the Noguys to abandon the newly built cities were declined. Among the Noguys themselves, there was no unity. One part passed over the Volga to the Crimean side and swore allegiance to the Crimean Khan. Another part went to the so-called small Noguy horde in the North Caucasus. A significant part of Moses didn't support the Beks' anti-Russian line and inclined to friendship with Moscow. But in 1581, when Turkic was burned by free Cossacks, the Noguy authorities accused the Russian government of organizing the attack. In such circumstances, in the same 1586, Urus was forced to normalize relations with Russia. In the late 16th century, on Yaik River also appeared Russian governmental military governors, who, despite the Noguy horde's protests, founded Yaik town. After death of the Bek, another disturbance began in Noguy horde. Russia didn't stay on the sidelines from the events either. Weakening of the horde was advantageous for it. In the second half of the 16th century, the Noguy horde was split into the Big Noguy, the Small Noguy, and the Altiul horde, which didn't play an outstanding historical role. After a bloody strife, only poor remnants of the former mighty state formation survived. The Noguy's territory was now limited mainly to the interfluvae of the Volga and Yaik. Ishtarek became a Bek in 1600. Disorder among the Noguys grew stronger. Large groups of them migrated under the rule of the Crimean Khanate.
Окончательно раскол оформился именно на фоне давления со стороны калмыков.
The final split took place against the backdrop of pressure by the Kalmyks and the Moscow state. Obviously, actions were taken to ensure that the rest-to-losers of the former horde gradually moved into its orbit of influence. That is, external interactions and external influences naturally provoked this split. When one of the external players put a stake on one of them, the other put a stake on the second one, and this alienated them from each other. Against this background, there was a break of traditional ties, including economic, military and all other ties, which were only formalized by the fact that this clan ruled here and that clan ruled there. First of all, I see the influence of external forces on the Noguys. And this influence caused such fragmentation within their unions, which was only fixed by the fact that the small Noguy horde was ruled by some people, while the big Noguy horde was governed by others. I think that interaction between them continued even after political formalization of this split. It can largely be fixed geographically, that is, a part of the Noguys went towards the Caucasus. This was also their traditional habitat. It is fixed by the fact that the course of the Volga gradually began to be controlled by the Moscow state. Traditional ways of interaction between these clans were destroyed. Nevertheless, historical memory always united them, their language, culture, family ties. And on occasion, some separate transitions of families, clans and brave persons were recorded throughout history.
Удальцов, они фиксировались на протяжении всей истории.
These Noguy letters, written with an Eastern altiloquent, show some brain formation, remarkable in the nomadic people. Nikolai Karamzin. The Noguy state dominated and was one of the unconditional hegemons in Eastern Eurasia, although for a relatively short time in the late 15th and in the first half of the 16th century. The apogee of its power fell at the second quarter of the 16th century, after which it gradually weakened and finally disintegrated. Ancestors of Kazakhs and Kyrgyzs, Kazan, Crimean, Siberian and Astrakhan Tatars, Bashkirs and Karakalpaks, Turkmens and Kalmyks, Don and Ural Cossacks, as well as many peoples of the North Caucasus, came in contact with the Noguy horde and its descendants, and partly assimilated.